why an adaptive intervention is best is because it adapts to the crisis and how the crisis is affecting the people, right? So usually crisis will move from life-threatening to life-altering in different stages and different phases, as we've said. So I want to kind of explain this with an example. So I go back to the example of the camps that I was explaining about before, okay, so that we get a picture. So at the time when I was a program manager, well, I was a project coordinator. The programs we were running were essentially WASH, okay, because there were no water in the camps. There was not enough water. So the program consisted of drilling boreholes and building water points and latrine building. Okay, so that was fine, right? Anyway, it's a beautiful moment when you bring water to a camp, right? When the water spouts out of the borehole and you put a tap on it and people have access to water, that's fine. But that doesn't solve all of the problems, as we all know. And then there's more problems. But what I wanted to get back to was the emotional state of the people in the camps, right? Now they've got water, but their situation hasn't really changed. They're still living in really bad situations. They're kept in the camp by force. They're only allowed out in a specific radius, which was very small. So, and their dignity has gone, their hope has gone. They've been there for decades. Children have been born and grown up and still there. Yeah, so sometimes for some of them, their only reality was this camp, living in these terrible situations. Yeah. So when we started to, we had this program going on, right? This drilling boreholes and water points and latrines. We started to see that we started to ask more questions, and we saw that people, what they really wanted to do was to get their dignity back, right? So all of these opinions that we have that, the beneficiaries are dishonest and tricking the system and all they want is aid and passive, and, we have these moralistic appraisals sometimes of them, no? Why aren't they doing more? Why aren't they motivated? Like I said before, no? Why aren't they digging that a 3-meter hole with gusto and motivation? And that's unrealistic, right? Would you? No. So we started thinking about it and how to act on their dignity, right? So their lives have been altered. They've been taken from their farming activities or their livestock activities and their lives in their different communities and shoved into this disgusting camp and organized by blocks randomly, right? They lived in blocks, block A, block B, whatever, block 23, whatever, that was their reality, yeah? And we started thinking about how we could give them back their dignity, right? Because their lives had been altered totally. Yeah, everything about their lives had been altered. Everything. Not only that, they'd lost their families, but they were still living in very violent circumstances, right? Because camps, believe it or not, do not bring out the best in people. Understandably, when you throw people together and you force them to be together, conflict happens, right? So we had an idea that at the time in the clusters, they were talking about, okay, we need to do NFI distributions and all this. And we thought about it and we thought, okay, giving them more jerry cans or giving them more plastic sheeting, okay, that's fine, but it's just sustaining their situation. It's marginal improvement is anything. We thought, what about giving them back their livelihoods? So we worked very, very hard to convince the donors that the best thing for these people was that they could farm and provide for themselves again. And this would give them back their dignity, right? So everybody told us this wasn't possible. Yeah, this wasn't possible. They didn't have any land. They'd sell the seeds, etc., etc., etc. All the reasons. And the best thing was NFI. That was what would have impact. Okay, so we wrote a concept paper and we lobbied and we tried to persuade, and we eventually got funding to shift from an NFI program to a seeds and tools program, right? It was contingent on getting land, which was a big problem. But we spoke to the communities, we spoke to the people in the camp, we spoke to the people who owned the land, and they were all very happy to give land to people so that they could plant their own crops, right? So it was a long story, but it's a beautiful story. And for me, it was a big learning point that this program transformed those people's lives. Light came back into their eyes. They were able to provide for themselves. They had an activity, they had something to do every day. They could plant their seeds. They would care for their land. They would care for their crops. They would harvest. They would keep seeds to plant the next season, right? And they transformed. Their faces transformed. Their eyes transformed. Their lives were transformed. And that's what I think of as a transformational type of program that acts on not giving out jerry cans or giving out more plastic sheeting, but acts on the situation in the way that changes it dramatically for the better. So that program, which actually was logistically as difficult maybe as NFI distribution or more, right? Was heavy to implement. Yeah, we had to get people who knew about agriculture, but I mean they're farmers. They knew themselves how to do all of that. Yeah, and we did a lot of distributions in quite risky areas, but it was worth it. I mean, I will never forget that whole program, that whole year. And we involved every single member of our staff in that. The cooks were involved. They came on the distributions, the cleaners, because we couldn't get resources from the donor. So we used guards. The whole project, the whole of everybody in the employed and more people were did it. The people who usually were involved in the wash, drilling boreholes and all that, they did it too, right? So you can always find resources, right? If you have the will to move them. And once people are motivated, right, you should see their motivation to dig big holes and their motivation to dig holes for their seeds. Think about it. Of course they were more motivated to do that, right? So the adaptive intervention is, okay, asking myself, do I fully understand the situation these people are in? Do I understand how their lives have changed from before? What can I do to give them back some of their lives from before, right? Because we can't assume that they come from everything bad and that everything's now worse and what they had before was terrible and whatever, right? And we can't think that an NFI distribution is going to transform something. It can help a little bit. But for people who have lost everything, to get a piece of plastic sheeting, a jerry can, some cooking utensils is good. Of course it is. But we have to remember the loss. What have these people lost? Right? And what is the emotional impact of this crisis and how they're being affected? And how can I make my program more adaptive to that and to them and to how they're feeling, right? Because sometimes we extract feelings and emotions and trauma from the people we're trying to help and just have them as the passive beneficiary or recipient of my goodwill and my good intentions, right? So we need to go a step further and understand what is the transformation that's occurred in their lives and how can I transform or retransform or give them back something of what they've lost. But first I have to understand what is it they've lost. And if I don't speak to them, I won't understand that. I'll only have a superficial, okay, no jerry cans, give jerry cans. no plastic sheeting, give plastic sheeting. No, we need to go dig deeper. Yeah? And that takes time, that takes effort, but it's so rewarding, because when you do stumble on, not stumble, get it right. Yeah, understand their hierarchy of problems, understand the full picture, understand the people as a whole, your program will have impact on their lives for the better, right? And not just reach ticking of indicators or achieving the objectives stated in the paper. Okay, so being adaptive, being resourceful, being able to be flexible, right? Have the mindset of, what can I do now to make it better? What can I do now to make their lives better? What can I do now to make this program more adapted to transforming their lives for better? There's always something, right? Because if you have the mentality that what's in the paper is the best I can do, in my opinion, that's the wrong mindset. Your mindset needs to be, this is the paper, and I'm going to improve this paper. Yeah, and the way I do that is by understanding how people's lives have been affected and are being affected from them themselves, right? From them themselves. And then asking myself and my team as well, okay, how would we feel if it was us, right? What problems do I see in how I'm implementing if it was me, if it was us, team? And have these conversations regularly with your team. And have these conversations especially with the people affected by your program.